Hey, welcome back. We are ready to show our countdown time in the actual widget. So far, we're only using print string nodes so that we know how much time is left, but we need to actually set the text in the widget. So we're going to show the countdown time in the widget in this video. Now, I'm back here in WBP Start Game Widget, and we saw that we added some text to this widget. And there are a couple of things we need to change with this text widget so that we can edit the text dynamically. The first thing I'd like to do is, with the text widget selected here in the Details panel, there is a name for this text, and it's set to a default name, Text Block 470, which is not very descriptive. So I'd like to rename this, and let's call this Display Text. Now, right next to this text block, we can see this checkbox that says is variable. Now, it's not checked, and if we go back to the event graph section, we don't see this text widget as a variable here. But if we go back to Designer and check this text box is variable, then once we go back to the graph, we'll see that display text is now visible in the variables section, and we can click and drag off and click Get Display Text here. And now we have access to this node, which means we can change the text. Now, I'd like to drag this down to case 3 in our switch statement, where we're printing the string get ready to the screen. Now, instead of using a print string, I'd like to set the text for our text widget, and I can do that by dragging off of its output pin and typing set text, and here we see a set text in parentheses text node. If I click that, then I get a set text node. And here is an input called inText. Now, it takes an input value of type text, but we can also click the text box here and hard code the value we'd like to set the text to. So I'm going to type get ready, and rather than using this print string, I'm going to remove that print string and drag the case 3 execution wire into the input execution pin for the set text node. Now, if I compile and hit play, I'll see that it says get ready, which is the same text that it was before, so it doesn't look any different, but we can prove that it is using the text in the set text node by changing this. I'll add a couple of exclamation points, so there are 3 of them, and now if I hit play, I see 3 exclamation points. So this node is in fact setting the text for our text widget. So I'm going to challenge you to set the text so that we can print a different message for each of the cases in our switch statement. For 3, you can leave it at get ready. For 2, print the text 2 to the screen. For 1, print 1. And for 0, I'd like you to print go. Now for the default case, which is when we've run out of time, just print an empty string, which means you can leave that input text box blank. So pause the video and remove those print strings and replace them with a set text node. And don't forget to plug in the input to the set text node, the value from our text widget. Pause the video and do this now. Okay, so I'd like to use this set text node, and I'm going to highlight both of these nodes so they're both selected and use Control W to copy that, and I'm going to use the 0 case. I'm going to just hook it straight up to the set text node, and rather than printing go with a print string, I'm going to print go by setting the text to go. And now I can remove this print string. Now I need to set the text for cases 1 and 2. So I'm going to copy this set text node and hook up the 1 case and simply print 1 and remove that print string. Now I'm going to move these nodes out of the way so that I can add another set text node and hook up 2 to this one and use 2 as the text. And I can remove that print string. And finally, I can replace the start game with an empty string. So I'm going to hook up the default to another set text and simply use no text so that we're setting the text to nothing. Now I'm going to remove that print string, compile, and play. And there is the countdown timer, and it goes away as soon as the game starts. So that's exactly what we were after. Now, A couple of things. One is I'm going to go back to the Designer tab and scroll down with the text selected. I'm going to scroll down to the Appearance, and you'll see that we have this justification, and it's justified to the left, which is why the 2 and 1 get printed slightly to the left. But if I select Align Text Center, now if I hit play, I'll see that my text is aligned to the middle. Now we can give our text a shadow. Here we see shadow color. We can select that, and we can give the text its own shadow. The alpha is set to 0, but if I drag it up to 1, now I have a shadow, and I can give the shadow a width, such as 1, and now our text will have a black shadow. If I click play, then I can see that my text is a little bit more visible thanks to that shadow. So there are a number of different parameters you can change to alter the way that the text looks. And I'm going to leave that as an exercise for you to go in and change different parameters to see how they affect the text. So this is great. Let's go back into the Graph tab, and we now know that we're setting the text based on our countdown time. Now this is still being called every frame of the game, even after the game has already started. Now this isn't a very intense computation, so it's not going to slow our game down, but it's not very efficient to keep doing this when we don't need to. So we can prevent all these nodes from firing when the game starts with a simple Boolean variable. Let's add a new variable, and I'm going to rename this variable Game Started. Now, again, if I scroll down to the bottom of the details panel, for the default value, we cannot set this until we compile. It says, please compile the blueprint. It's kind of hard to see because it's really small, but if we click compile, now we can give this Boolean a default value, and it shows a checkbox unchecked, which when you hover over it says false. So its default value is false, and that's exactly what I want, because I'd like to use a branch to prevent any of this from happening. Now, to create a branch node, which is essentially the blueprint version of an if statement, we can right-click and type branch and select branch. That's one way to get a branch. Another way is to hold the B key down and left-click, and that will also create a branch. Now we can plug in the input execution wire, and we see that we have a Boolean input called condition. We can use our game started as the condition. So let's drag that in. And as a shortcut, if you drag it straight onto the input, it will start off already plugged in to the branch. Now, the branch will execute one of two wires depending on the truth value of this Boolean variable. If game started is true, then I would like to not do anything else, because we should only be printing text to the screen if the game has not started yet. So I'd like to hook up all of this blueprint logic to the false case. So if I hook up false to our set countdown, then we basically have this if check that will only execute these blueprint nodes if the game has not started yet. Now we need to change this Boolean as soon as the game starts, which is going to be for the default case. So what we can do here in the default case is we can set that Boolean by clicking on it from here in the variable section, dragging it out and selecting set game started. And here we can set its value. And if we check the checkbox, we will be setting it to true. So we can hook up this execution wire. Now we don't need to display any text in this case. What we'd like to do is simply set that Boolean, and then we can remove our widget from the viewport. Now, the way to remove a widget from the viewport is to right-click and create a node called Remove from Parent. This is how we remove a widget from the viewport, and if we fire this off, then our widget will be gone. Let's compile and hit play, and we'll wait for that countdown timer, and there we have it, our widget is gone. So not only are we removing this widget in the default case, but we're also setting this game started Boolean so that every frame we will check this game started Boolean and it will now be true, which means we will not execute the false case and we won't go through any of this other blueprint logic. Now, yes, we're making the Boolean check every single frame, but this is not a very expensive operation, so we will not see any performance hit by doing this. In fact, Updating this countdown float is not a very expensive operation either, but it's good to minimize the amount of operations if they're not being used. That's good programming practice. So we now have a working HUD, and it's printing the text and showing the countdown and informing us that the game has started. So we have now showed the countdown time in our widget, which means that it's very clear when the game is starting and how much time has to pass before the player can start moving the tank around. This is great. So back to our section plan, we see that we've created our tank that can move throughout the world and handle input. We've created an enemy turret class called Tower in C++, and we've added fire functionality with projectiles. We have health and damage as well as destruction in our game. Now, we still need to add special effects, and we need to show when we win or lose the game using HUD displays. We've now seen how to use HUD displays, so this should be a relatively simple task. So we're almost done with this game. Congratulations. I'll see you in the next video.